if not the only channel. So they have a chance to, if you look at the proposals being put in, especially the one being selected, a lot of them are from developing countries. So this will really sort of give them a sort of foot in the door for this almost most important thing, one of the most important thing for the next leg of development of human in space. Yeah.
Do you know anyone from, for example, from other foreign university who has been applying for the program on China's Tiangong space station?
Right. I know from Italian colleagues. Italy is actually really strong in this, and also for gravitational wave stuff, some Chinese teams doing experiments on there who have colleagues working instantly with Italy. So they're doing things like drag-free, which means to test gravity, you want something to be in true free fall. The station isn't actually in true free fall because there's still some air up there and also the radiation. So they have a container in there, and you have something isolated from everything else, and it can really be in free fall to be used for testing gravity.
So this is the elevator.
So they've arrived at their
They will
platform, right?
they will go to reach the ninth floor via this elevator.
So I'd like to ask you about the specs of this rocket that we're looking at. Professor Zhang, what sort of height, weight, payload do we have with this rocket, with the Long March?
So there's three modules of the crew thing. Shenzhou, it adds up to 8 tons. So that'll be low Earth orbit. So in the future, when you launch from sort of Long March 5, it can easily go 20 tons and above for low Earth. And then there's a rocket called Long March 9 in development. That's sort of 100-ton above range.
Okay. What we see this video is they are already on the ninth floor of the launch tower, the service tower. You can see other staffs. Most of them belongs to the astronaut system. Some belongs to the Shenzhou spaceship system, and they will give a final check, especially on their IVA spacesuit.
That's right. And I still remember that scene. It's the last time when we were launching the Shenzhou. I remember it's the Shenzhou-14, and when those because they're wearing a very heavy suit, so they cannot just take off their shoes and then put on the shoes by themselves.
The boots, they will take off their boots.
Right.
Yeah, because you know that in our space field, the objects, even especially some small objects, can cause very serious problems. So we must ensure that it is very clean. So they always wearing a boots before they reaching the spaceship. But before they enter the spaceship, they will take off their boots.
Take off the boots.
And there it is. It's happening now.
They need some assistance.
Yeah. And also we have sensors to monitor their, for instance, the cardiovascular system, and also their healthy conditions, and so on.
And they'll be wearing these sensors all throughout. This is attached to their spacesuit as well?
Inside the spacesuit.
You don't want to move too much to break them down.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is a very similar thing from the last few launches.
The selection of the astronaut, the psychological features is also a very important consideration when we select the astronauts. So, although in this moment most of us are very exciting, maybe very nervous, but they are very calm.
Very calm and composed.
Yeah.
So we're actually looking at. We've got images there on the right of inside the capsule.
Well,
on the left is outside.
On the top right, we can see a video of the orbital module.
Okay.
So you know that the astronauts will enter their spaceship first, enter the orbital module, and then go down to the re-entry capsule. The re-entry capsule have 3 seats. First, the 03, or Mr.
Sorry, President.
渭南，明白？青岛，明白？天津，
We're hearing
酒泉，
They've been checking with the remote sensing.
东城。
different cities
station,
across
right.
China, right? So we're hearing a list of cities
And this is
reporting back.
Well, this is the huge program that's been involved.
Yeah.
Many people in many locations to be involved in this.
What we just heard is the commander of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center confirm the status of each ground station.
That's right. They're the alpha.
Yeah.
There's
What we
everyone
heard
just
is
followed.
the ground station near the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center and those along the ground track
That's
of
right.
this Long March 2F. So we must ensure that every system, as you mentioned, it is a huge system, including not only the launch vehicle, the launch pad, the Shenzhou
各号
spaceship,
注意，
but also
计算机理论弹道检查5分钟准备。08号，明白。太原，明白。
They're again checking
渭南
with all the
More
various
testing.
ground
More
stations.
testing and more
明白
check-ins.。
天津，明白。
That's
酒
going to be a
泉，
long
明白
process.。
青山，明白。双城，
明白，
5号，
明白。
they are checking the trajectories.
Trajectories,
You know that why this is important, because you know that as we have already heard, all the ground stations along the ground track, they must tracking the spacecraft. So we can only achieve this with the very precise trajectory, because with a wrong trajectory, they cannot capture the spacecraft.
That's it.
So this is the reason why we need to check that.
So Professor Yang, you watched the last few launches as well. So roughly at what time would they go into the capsule, and how long would the wait be for these astronauts then, before the actual liftoff?
Usually
Maybe.
2.5 hours before the launch window.
But they'll be ready inside the capsule.
They will
for perhaps-
into the. But still, at this moment, we have the ground staff inside the capsule
Right.
to perform all kinds of checkings. You know that it is very interesting that the Shenzhou spaceship, although as Professor Zhang has mentioned, we only have the limited capability, maybe about 50 kilograms or to 100 kilograms of cargo to bring back to the Earth. But for the uploading, it is bigger, about more than maybe 200 kilograms or 300 kilograms. So most of these cargoes are fixed inside the orbital module, and some are time sensitive. You see that, for instance, if you want to perform some biological experiments, maybe in the future, maybe animals. So you know that they are living things, so we can only install these kind of cargo inside the cabin maybe several
各号
hours
注意，
before the
洲
launch.
际5分钟准备情况。08号，
5分钟准备完
Again,
毕
they're。checking in with all the various ground
渭南
stations.
，5分钟准备完毕
And。also,
青岛，
spacesuit is a very
5分钟准备完毕
critical。
天津，
elements and critical
5 分
parts
钟
of
准
for
备完毕。
every
酒
space
泉，
program.
5分钟准备完毕。
And they're
青山，5分钟
Just
准
tell
备
us
完
a
毕
little。bit more about their spacesuits
5分钟
right
准备
now
完
they're
毕。
wearing.
5号，
Yes.
This is
what
not an
we-
EVA. This is not an EVA.
No,
suit.
no,
This
no,
is
no.
not-
This is IVA spacesuit or intravehicular spacesuit. So this is the second measure to ensure the safety of their lives. You see, they do have tragedies before. You know that during the early stages, during the
各号
space
注意
race,，
计算机理论弹道检查1分钟准备。
Right, so the voices we're hearing are basically all the ground
yeah, yeah.
checks. So let's continue.
And we're gonna hear more and more
yeah.
words like
So
that
what we
after
heard
this.
voice is the checking of the trajectory.
Yeah.
You know that to have more astronauts inside a limited cabin, the former Soviet Union chose a very risky way. They let the cosmonauts to take off their IVA spacesuits and only wearing ordinary suits inside their cabin, so they can have 3 astronauts inside a very small volume. But in 1971, 3 cosmonauts lost their lives when they returned the Earth because there is a malfunction of a valve and the whole cabin is depressurized, and the 3 cosmonauts died in a very painful way. Because after that, there is no exception. Any space mission, we must have an IVA spacesuit. It is a pressurized one, although it's much it's much simpler than the EVA spacesuit, but we must have this.
T 0动80 26分动拐秒，拐8 2毫秒。T 0动80
What we heard
26
now
分
is
动拐
a
秒，
simulation.
拐8 2毫秒
We。can recognize as a drill of the real launch.
Oh, okay. So that was the countdown
That's
to
the
the drill.
rehearsal.
Yeah.
for- So it'll be rehearsal on the computer.
So with this procedure, we can check if the whole system, including other ground stations, is okay.
So before all of this, the rocket has actually already been at Jiuquan launch pad for about 208.
6 months.
6 months or so.
Above, yeah. It's the backup for the last mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anything goes wrong, they launch this thing for
So
the rest
this
of the
rocket
mission.
has been standing by for, I remember, it's 8 months. Or
Oh, yeah,
more than
a
that.
bit longer
Pretty
than
much
6.
since
At least 6,
since
yeah.
the last crew went up.
That's right.
Soon
Yeah,
after that.
It's also
So
make a record.
that's a very interesting mechanism for this backup. So every time when, for example, like when Shenzhou-13 leave the Earth, the Shenzhou-14 will be back up, and now this time it's the Shenzhou-14, and there are also another 3 astronauts standing by.
At this moment, the combination of the
So
Shenzhou
actually, sorry, just to
15.
interrupt you, Professor Yang, we're actually looking at, I believe that's the commander.
No.
Heading
This
in.
is
Is that not
Mr.
the
Cai
commander?
Shizhe.
Cai Shizhe.
Ah, okay.
The commander will sit in the center, so he goes in the last. Otherwise, he's going to block the way for the other.
So there'll be
yeah.
like 03, 02, and 01, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
this
you can
order.
see this video is in the orbital module. They were first entering the Shenzhou spaceship from the side hatch. Now Mr. Cai Shizhe is already in the orbital module, and then go down to the re-entry capsule
It is incredibly tight in there.
with the help of the ground staff. They must protect their helmet and the spacesuit.
And how long do they have to stay in this cabin before
About
they can get
about
into the
2
Tampa
more
core
more
module?
hours.
2 more.
Yeah, because after
It's
this
2 more hours before liftoff.
Before
To get
li-
into
before liftoff.
Tiangong, we were talking how many hours?
So
At
if you,
least 8 hours, I believe.
so it's very
before they can
interesting.
get into it.
Inside their
It's a
IVA
long
spacesuits, they
wait.
must have the diapers.
That's right. They can move.
Yeah. Because at this moment they cannot go to toilet.
That's
Not
right.
too much coffee before they enter this.
Yeah, and we need diaper too. This live stream is going to be 4 hours, so
And although you know that although this is several hours, it takes several hours, but still they have many important tasks. For instance, to check the communication, the voice, and also to check the airtight sealings of their spacesuit. This is also very critical for ensure the safety.
So how difficult is it for them to move around in the suits that they're wearing now, would you say, Professor Zhang?
It's not that difficult. This is a stripped down version of the spacesuit. It just provide the necessary pressure. The problem with pressure is if you have higher pressure, it's like a tire. You blow up into a Michelin Man. You can't really move in it. So for EVA, the proper spacesuit, you have to harden it on the outside
That's
to make it
100
work.
or so kilos, isn't it?
Yeah, this one, if it blows up, if it balloons up, it just balloons up.
Right.
It doesn't-
And you may notice
Yes,
that
it's sitting down.
each of the seat is produced according to the shape of the certain person. So each one is different.
Oh, I see. They're tailor-made suits
Yeah,
to their
exactly.
height and weight.
So
Ah.
and also they use special material to reduce the vibration during the launch.
now you're watching Mr. Cai Shizhe is sitting on.
So this stage, it's all
Yes,
done
the-
by themselves. There's nobody to help them kind of strap in, sit in. So am I understanding this correctly? Are they now sitting completely reclined and facing
Luan
upwards?
is about to enter.
Yeah, yes.
The Luan is about to enter.
02. Miss Liu Yang is 02.
02. Our female astronaut.
Very great.
She is waving goodbye.
景山报告，
Just waving goodbye to the
我是北京。
Let's give
probably
you
for families.
a little bit of background about Liu Yang. So she's 43 years old, and she has already made history as China's first woman in space. She was named as a crew member on the Shenzhou-9 mission in 2012. She comes from Zhengzhou, that's in central China's Henan province, and she joined the People's Liberation Army Air Force in 1997. She's a veteran pilot.
请讲。
She became that after achieving more than 1,600 hours of flight time. And in 2010, she was named as part of China's second astronaut corps, where she excelled in all her training courses. So that's why we're seeing her now.
That's right. And as Professor Yang mentioned, the Liu Yang is the PhD
北
holder.
京
Huh?
华山报告。
And also, there are many interesting stories. You see that Liu Yang is the first visitor, female visitor to
Right.
Tiangong 1,
Right.
and Wang Yaping is the second one. And Liu Yang said she has prepared some gift for Yaping. and when Yaping comes into the Tiangong 1, she found her gift.
Okay.
So it would definitely be good for Liu Yang to have Yaping having had all this experience and being able to impart some of this to her, because it would be very different I suppose in some ways for women than for men up in this kind of microgravity environment because of our different physiologies, right?
Well, Yaping has a very famous saying, the outer space, the environment is crucial. It will not looking after you because you are women.
Yeah.
So they must be trained with the same type of courses like men.
And I believe, according to some researchers, that women are more suitable for space condition and other very extreme
in
conditions.
some certain aspects.
Some certain extreme conditions,
yeah,
the
yeah,
women
yeah.
have better chance to survive than man. So
in certain circumstances.
right, I would believe this.
Commander.
The Commander Chen Dong is about to enter the capsule, and Chen Dong is 43-year-old from Luoyang in central China's Henan province. And Chen joined the People's Liberation Army Air Force in 1997, where he was a fighter pilot. He was also named to China's second group of astronauts in 2010. His space debut was in 2016's Shenzhou-14 mission, and that mission set a record for China's then longest stay in space of 33 days.
And he has 2 kids, twin brothers.
Right, and I still remember this, the last mission that Chen Dong has been involved. She has been following, I believe it's
11
Nie
mission.
Haisheng.
No, Mr. Jing Haipeng.
Jing Haipeng and Chen Dong are teamed up for Shenzhou-14 mission. And that will be the first time that Chen Dong has been entering the space.
And it is very interesting that during the Shenzhou-11 mission, Mr. Chen Dong and Mr. Jing Haipeng, as Mr. Zhang has already mentioned, they grow some vegetables during that mission. But they haven't eat that because
so it's not the first time that we grow.
They bring that back to the Earth, and the experts must ensure it's safe for the astronaut. And also, they grow some cocoons, the silkworms, during the Shenzhou-11 mission.
That's a sort of a school experiment that every Chinese child has probably been
That's
through,
right.
right?
Yeah, but they gotta
So
do it.
have that experience.
you know that the eggs of the silkworms really hatched and finally formed the cocoons.
Are they not just floating? Just a little cabin of floating silkworms.
Yeah, morphing into butterfly doesn't really mean much better
No, exactly. They can already fly.
So I can still remember that the scene that Mr. Jing Haipeng, there is a silkworm on his hand in the microgravity environment.
But
floating.
I'm not sure if any of those vegetable or cocoons could be allowed to bring back to the Earth due to the concern of contamination.
These are only scientific research samples, so they brought them back to the
just
Earth.
for specific samples.
But in the future, you know that I believe that sooner or later, our astronauts can have the chance to eat very fresh vegetables they grown in outer space because the ISS has already do so.
That's right.
So, Professor Zhang, I want to ask you about the launch window as well. So, what are they looking for? What is the sort of parameters and conditions they're looking for the launch window?
Right, so it's not determined by humans, it's really the physics that sets the date. So essentially, when your spacecraft is in orbit, it's rotating on a plane, in a circle inside the plane, and the Earth is rotating at the center of it, and the Earth rotates. So if you launch from a different time, then the launch vehicle will go into a different circle in a different plane, sort of intersecting, but not in the same direction. So every day you have 2 chances of where the orbit of the Tiangong is actually above the launch site, so you can launch something to chase after it. So and then one of them is better suited for the short duration sort of fast docking procedure. You chase it up really quickly. So this time it's as your question asked earlier, it's going to be 6.5 hours of chasing after the space station, and then a couple of hours to get in there, so at least 8 hours. But in the past, that's like 2-3 days. That's why you have the orbital module. They can eat and take back restroom breaks up
That's
there.
right, and we have been short in this process.
Extremely short.
Yeah.
SpaceX doesn't do that yet. So
Right.
the Russians, the Soyuz modules, the very experienced operators can do this. If you watch the return with the SpaceX crew, it's a long return, 20 hours or so. Going up is really long as well. As you can imagine, it's very uncomfortable, and if the toilet breaks,
That's right.
it's painful. And then
Because I can
At least
still
their seats are tailor-made for them, right? For
Right.
comfort.
right.
Because I can still remember this, though, when the first time when we were trying to launch the mission like that, is the
各号
time
请
is longer
搜集
than
计算机理论弹道检查情况。 08号，
We need much
计算机
longer
理论
time
弹道
for
检查正
docking
常。
太原
and other process, but now we're getting this process has
计
been
算机理
shortened.
论弹道检查正常。
How long would the launch window
计算机理论弹道
typically
检
be?
查正常。
It's not accurate
计
down to
算
the
机理
second
论弹道
minute,
检
is
查
it?
正常。
Minutes, 10
Minutes. Down to
minutes.
minutes.
Wow, if you miss it a little bit, I mean, you can spend more fuel if you have
正常。
something to spare. But
计算机理论弹道检查正常。
Okay,
Again, we're
but
hearing a little check.
still performing the trajectory checking on computers. But what you asked, that the first this kind of mission is the Shenzhou-14 mission. But before that, all of our space missions are independent flights. But since the Shenzhou-14 mission, we must launch as Professor Zhang has mentioned, we must launch the spacecraft into the same orbital plane of its target. So at that moment, we use what we call the zero launch window technology. Which means that the accuracy of the launch moment will be within 1 second.
Within a second.
Within 1 second. So that's a very strict requirement to the whole system. Because if anything happened, anything wrong happened, even to the ground stations, we must halt the whole procedure. So the zero launch window is a very strict requirement to all systems. And also the guidance method is called the iterational guidance methods to achieve this goal. But today it is improved.
Is entering the cabin, and we can see that Mr. Chen is adjusting his position.
Yeah.
I think the signal
It's
is
just freezing a little bit. But what is that he's holding over there? That yellowish colored.
Some other brochure.
各号注意，搜集3小时准备情况。0号，
Okay, they've been
3
collecting more
小时准备完毕。
information
太原
for the final
3小
launching
时准备
time.
完毕。归南
3小时
In
准备完
what
毕。
sort of
青岛
circumstances
3小时准备完毕。
would it lead to having
3
to
小时
call off
准
the
备完毕。
launch?
酒泉
Professor Yang.
3小时准备完毕。
青山
At this
3 小
stage.
时准备完毕。
What we just heard is
Three hours
T-3 hours counting down preparation. They still need to check the status of every system. What you see on this video is that you see that there are some pockets on their IVA spacesuit, and they will bring their gloves out and wear that gloves. After that, they will check what I mentioned, the communication check and also the airtight sealing check. And also, you may notice that there are seat belt, safety belt, and finally they will fix themselves on the seat belt. But at this moment, still the hatch of the Shenzhou spaceship has not been closed. So after some check of the launch vehicle itself and some of the Shenzhou spaceship, finally the ground staff will first close the hatch between the orbital module and the re-entry capsule because this hatch is above the seats, the 3 seats. Then the astronaut cannot touch it, so it can only be done by the ground staff. And then they will finally close the hatch on the side hatch of the orbital module.
So you see that they're packing something away right now.
Yeah.
Is that, what would that be? Looks like some
We
kind
see
of
very
belt.
clearly.
they changed the procedures, haven't they? Because in the past it used to be 2 hours before launch that they get in there. It's T-3 now.
T minus 2 in a few
T-minus,
minutes. I believe. T-minus
2 hours. It's
Yeah.
already
T-2,
T-minus
okay,
2 hours
okay,
now.
okay.
So this is the menu.
The scheduled launch is 10:44 Beijing time.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's in 2 hours and just under 4 minutes.
So, but as we have already discussed, today it is already improved. It is improved from the zero launch window to a narrow launch window. So the zero launch window requires that the launch moment will be, the accuracy will be
Within a
in
second.
1
Within
second.
a second.
But for a narrow launch window, as Professor Zhang has mentioned, maybe several minutes. Because you know that today we have already improved or optimized the guidance method. With these improvements, the launch vehicle can adjust its trajectory during the flight. From the zero launch window to the narrow launch window, it reduces the requirement to the other systems. So this means that reducing the requirement to other systems means that increasing the reliability of the whole course.
And also the Long March 2F, this rocket that this time to carry out of 3 astronauts, has a very special design called Escape Tower on the very top of the fairing. And Professor Zhang, you want to tell
Yes.
us a little bit more about this, how the system works when emergency happens?
What you asked is just the reason why we call the Long March 2F the only human-rated launch vehicle in China. Because the safety, that's originally, today the reliability is also increased, but in the original flights, the reliability figure of the Long March 2F is 0.97. Which means for every 100 launches, maybe in 3 times, there will something fatal mistake. But this, obviously this is not safe enough for the astronauts. So because of this, we adopted an emergency escape system. With this emergency escape system, we can increase the safety of the astronauts to 0.997. Which means for every 1,000 launches, we only have 3 times we threaten the safety of the astronauts. Actually speaking, the emergency escape system is composed of several elements. The first one is what called the emergency
Closing the
escape
hatch
door.
The
there
hatch
right
has
now.
been sealed off.
That's what I mentioned, closing the
Close
hatch. Yeah, by the ground staff. You can see all kinds of goods fixed in the orbital module.
So
So
all 3 astronauts been set, and the working staff is to live in the cabin.
So they'd be wearing something similar to seatbelts, would they?
Yeah. Because that during the work of the launch vehicle, there will be very intensive vibration. Not only have G load. So why Mr. Yang Liwei feel very uncomfortable during the first the maiden flight, the crewed mission? Because that's the vibration. And the G forces works together.
Yeah.
This cannot be simulated on the ground.
Yeah, the vibration is probably the more surprising part, right? The G-force, normal launch isn't actually that bad. I mean, a normal person can handle it. That's why you have commercial. But the escape thing that Professor Yang just mentioned, that just yank you straight up, that's going to be like over 10 G or maybe, I don't know. For training, they do 8 G, so that's not going to be
There are vibration test beds on the ground, and the astronauts will be tested
4号
and
注意，
Right.
我是
adapted.
2小时准备，
All right, we just
Dong
have
Feng.
the
Two
T-
hours.
明白
T minus 2 hours.
华山
counting
明白
down.，
江阴
After
各号
2
注意
hours,
，2小时准备，连号，
明白
太原，明白，渭南，
明白
青岛，
明白
天津，
明白
酒泉，
明白
青山，
明白
双城，
明白，
5号，
明白，
天仓，
明白。
but after 2 hours, the Shenzhou-14 crew will lift off.
So just we also heard, because it is already T minus 2 hours and counting. This is a very critical checking point. And at this point, the commander asked every system, every ground station to confirm it's okay. Go for launch.
We're now seeing the escape
Yeah.
towers.
The fourth
solid
platform,
module.
as I mentioned, the fourth rotational platform has opened first. You can see that the emergency escape system has already. We can see that. So as Mr. Yang Zhao has asked, the
各号注意，我是东风，第一次综合检查，5分钟准备，景山，
营山明白，
华山，
This is
华山
still
明白。
checking process.
yeah.
And it'll be the
From the
first
Dongfeng launch
time
明白
太原，明白，渭南，
明白
青岛，
明白
天津，
明白
酒泉，
明白
青山，
明白
双城，
明白，
5号，
明白。
Yeah, you can see this the solid rocket.
Yeah.
Professor
top.
Zhang, so China has several generations of the Long March rocket, right? So why is it that after all these new generations, they've come back to the Long March 2?
It's the really reliable one. This one, as Professor Yang mentioned, the reliability coefficient isn't that high. It's 0.98 something, but it hasn't failed. It's 100% success rate. The space shuttle has a theoretical higher reliability rate, but it already failed a couple times, so it's theoretical. But the safety feature is enormous. So apart from this one, this is used for really low altitude. When it goes really high up, when this thing gets jettisoned, there's another escape, high altitude escape on the fairing itself.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
then
quite right.
after that, obviously, when the fairing drops off, you can just come down like the usual how you return.
我是东风，华山请讲。
So
华
safety
山第一次综合检查
safety
5分
coefficient
钟
is
准备完毕
extremely high. It's
东风明白。
0.999 something.
Right.
So yeah.
So can we expect this rocket to be used for the future launches as well, for the 15 and potentially after that?
15 and a few after.
The Shenzhou-14 and its rocket, the Long March 2F Y-15 rocket, is already standing 1.5 kilometers away from the rocket pad
Getting
in
ready.
the vehicle assembly building.
They're
It's
standing
already
by.
there.
Yeah, they're standing by. And that's why we.
And we can see that the emergency escape has already been exposed. So the first part of the emergency escape is this emergency tower. This tower has several solid rocket engines for emergency case to help the spaceship to leave the launch vehicle to a certain distance. And another part, as Professor Zhang has mentioned, is some rocket engines, solid rocket engines on the payload
5分钟
ferry.
准备完毕。
So after about 120 minutes, the emergency escape tower will be jettisoned. And after this, if anything wrong happened, the payload fairing, the rocket engines will help the ship to leave the rocket. But after jettisoning of the payload fairing, if anything wrong happened, because this is already the second stage of the rocket. So at this moment, the Shenzhou spaceship can use its own engines to leave the launch vehicle. But I should emphasize that in all these procedures, if
Can
this
you see this picture? The Commander Chen Dong is using a.
What is he doing?
It's that was a specially designed. I believe it's the pole to touching on the screen.
like a touch
'Cause-
pad thing.
That's right.
you
The
can
touch
still
bar.
see his handbook. Because you know that the launch itself is a very, very complex procedure. There are all kinds of checkings, all kinds of status confirm. So they must have this handbook to check one by one.
Surely this is something they've already read millions of times,
right.
you know, in the
Exactly.
lead up to this.
And it's a very similar process to when
Memorize
they
Quite
were
right.
the pilots. It's the
So
same.
as Mr. Yang Li has mentioned, one tough thing for an astronaut is that they must repeat something one time and one time
Time and
for
time
so
and
many
again.
years.
Time and
Just
time
learn
again.
everything by rote.
It's a little bit boring, but they must face that.
That's part of their training,
Protocol.
and it's very boring.
But in fact, though the escape system is automatic, so this is why you can't really have normal scientists, normal ordinary people just going up there by themselves.
That's right.
Hopefully in the future, you have voice assistants say.
But we are training the civilian astronauts, right? We're training the civilian and also
Not civilian astronauts,
the
but
payload specialty, I believe.
So
payload
we're
specialists.
looking now at
Specialist.
just some prompt there saying that we're in the 2 hours countdown, and also that they're doing their first comprehensive check right now, that everything is in order and ready for launch.
What Mr. Yang Zhao mentioned is belongs to the third group. You know
Third
that
group.
for the first group and the second group of astronauts of China, all of them are chosen from the pilots from the Air Force.
Yes.
But for the third group, we have those from the engineering field and those from the scientists. So these will be the mission specialists and maybe payload experts. Those belongs to the third group, and they will perform more complicated experiments in outer space.
Professor Zhang, earlier, sorry, did you say that the emergency escape is automatic, or isn't? Is automatic. So as long as if any of these parameters are breached, this would automatically launch, and they would be able to.
They will be yanked out straight up away from the presumably exploding rocket, and then at some stage the spiky tower thing will detach, and then the capsule containing the crew would drop down with a parachute and then land. They have actually optimized that procedure as well. So nowadays the rocket can fire in specific directions, so the parachute doesn't get blown back into the explosion side.
4、3、2、
They're counting down.
起飞。
That's a simulation.
That's still a simulation.
Another simulation.
Yeah, this will be the last. Maybe this will be the last simulation before the real launch.
5分。
But then do the astronauts also have control over this? Can they manually execute an escape and abort?
The escape, yeah, but once they're up there, they'll be blacked out. They can't really do much.
Yeah, remember the rocket, the solid rocket on the top of the ferry? They will be ignited if any emergency happen, and it will take those cabin away from the rocket.
Yeah, what you mentioned will be the first separation, the jettisoning of the emergency escape tower. The first critical step
in the first
of the launch.
200 seconds or
about
after the
120 seconds.
120 seconds
after the launch.
That's right. And also, Professor Jiuquan, and I believe the scientific research has been very, very critical parts of the Shenzhou-14 cruise. Do they have to? Have they been trained to how to conduct those scientific experiments, or those experiments can automatically be conducted by themselves? They have
to do some operations, and obviously they can contact people on the ground. But the design of the experiment has to be pretty self-contained. Involved in proposing some other experiments, so you have to essentially make it a black box, and you can't expect people to repair it. They don't have the tools anyways. So that's
the last time I remember I talked to Tricia LaRose, the researcher from Oslo University, who has one cancer research. The cancer research will be carried out on a Shenzhou space station, and it said everything is automatic. They don't need these astronauts to do anything about it. So everything has been set up.
They just have to take it there.
Yeah, just to take it.
So that's why it would be so good if the third generation have some experts in this. They can actually change the procedures depending on the outcome of the. Because it costs a lot to go up.
That's
and
right.
You want to extract as much.
It still needs these people to maintain, to maybe repair something if anything happened.
But
now Mr. Chen Dong will wear his gloves.
But what do we know so far about the third batch of astronauts that are in training right now? What kind of backgrounds do they have then as well? It wouldn't not just pilot.
16 of them young. They're in their 30s. Specific information hasn't been released. But they had their payload specialists, mission specialists, meaning that they would concentrate on specific payloads.
According to Ms. Huang Weifen, also we have female astronauts among the third group. We also have. And you know that part of them were chosen still from the Air Force, because you know that for any crewed mission we need the pilots, and also for the Shenzhou spaceship at least the 2 of the 3 astronauts must have are qualified pilots of the Shenzhou spaceship. In emergency cases, they must have the capability to make the right choices. So you can see that during the G-force training, in emergency case, although you know that in a normal flight, they will experience 3 to 4 G of G load, but in an emergency escape, it can up to 8 G. And during this process, they must have the capability to press the right buttons.
So in the future, we're looking at a group of astronauts going up there, potentially being a mix of pilots and specialists, as Dr. Zhang's saying.
Exactly.
So that gives them a lot more flexibility and options up there.
Eventually, tourists, hopefully. They did mention that in the future, Tiangong has a plan for more sort of touristy stuff in its far future.
Oh, you can see Miss Liu Yan has already closed her helmet. All of them.
All right, well, we're looking at this is the preparation for the launch of the Shenzhou-14 crew up to China's space station. This is our special program. We'll be following all the preparations and to the launch and after that as well, when they're on their way to the space station. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
The quest for space heats up as China races to finish its space station by the end of the year.
5 more